There is an image almost every person on Earth has seen. A sequence of figures, stooped and ape-like on the left, upright and modern on the right, a clean, logical march across the page. Evolution, the textbooks told us, was a straight line. One species, one story, one destination. That story is wrong. And the proof of just how wrong it is? Beat has been living inside your body this entire time. There is a ghost written into your genetic code, a species that officially doesn't exist, a lineage that left no confirmed archaeological culture, no cave paintings, no tools we've positively identified as theirs, and yet their biology is running inside you right now. In 2010, a research team from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology extracted genetic material from a finger bone fragment. The bone was approximately 50,000 years old. It had been found in a cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. When they sequenced the DNA, they expected to find either a Neanderthal or an early modern human. What they found was neither. The genome belonged to a previously unknown branch of the human family tree, a species, or more precisely a population, that had split from our common ancestor approximately 800,000 years ago and had been living, evolving, and interbreeding with other human lineages ever since. They called them the Denisovans. And their discovery didn't just add a footnote to our understanding of human evolution, it detonated the entire framework. Before we can understand what the Denisovans left inside you, we need to understand how scientists are even capable of reading genetic material that is tens of thousands of years old. Because this is not simple. When an organism dies, its DNA begins to degrade immediately. Bacteria, moisture, and oxidation break the double helix into increasingly shorter and shorter fragments. After 50,000 years, what remains is essentially molecular shrapnel. Modern paleogenomics, the science of extracting and reading ancient DNA, works by grinding these fragments into powder, chemically isolating the organic genetic material, and then using computational algorithms to reassemble millions of short sequences into a coherent genome. Think of it as reconstructing an entire novel from a bucket of confetti. What makes this extraordinary is not just that it's possible, it's how much information survives even in that shattered form. The Denisovan genome, despite being reconstructed from a fingertip and 2 molars, was sequenced to a quality comparable to modern human genomes. And when researchers began comparing it to the DNA of living humans today, they found something that changed everything. People of Melanesian and Aboriginal Australian ancestry carry on average between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. Not residue, not contamination. Functional, inherited, expressed genetic material from a species that no longer exists as a distinct population. Tibetan populations carry a specific Denisovan gene variant called EPAS1. This single gene is directly responsible for their extraordinary ability to function at high altitude, an adaptation so efficient that it cannot be explained by mutations occurring only within the Homo sapiens lineage over the available time frame. The mathematics simply don't work unless the gene was borrowed from a population that had been living at altitude for tens of thousands of years before modern humans arrived. This is what scientists call introgression, the flow of genetic material from one population into another through interbreeding. And it happened repeatedly, across continents, across hundreds of thousands of years. Modern humans didn't replace our archaic cousins. We absorbed them. The linear march was never real. What actually happened was a vast, tangled network of migration, encounter, reproduction, and genetic exchange playing out across Eurasia, Southeast Asia, and beyond for the entire duration of our species' existence outside of Africa. And the Denisovans were only the beginning of what we didn't know. In 2025, a genetic analysis of skeletal remains from the Donghulin site in China confirmed what researchers had long suspected but struggled to prove with physical evidence. There was a third human population. Dating to roughly 11,000 years ago, placing it at the very edge of the Pleistocene and Holocene transition, the Donghulin individuals showed a genetic signature that didn't align cleanly with any known human group, not Homo sapiens as we define the main lineage, not Denisovan, not Neanderthal, something adjacent to all of them. Something that had been living in East Asia, apparently in relative isolation, as the rest of the world was already developing agriculture. The implications are significant for two reasons. First, it demonstrates that human genetic diversity in prehistoric East Asia was considerably more complex than the current archaeological record suggests. We have been operating with an incomplete map. Second, it raises urgent questions about a skull that surfaced, quite literally, from the Songhua River in northeastern China. Homo longi, Dragon Man. The skull is massive, larger than most modern human skulls. The brow ridges are pronounced. The brain case is capacious, larger in fact, than the average Homo sapiens brain volume. And it is estimated to be at least 146,000 years old. When researchers at the Hebei Geo University formally analyzed the skull's morphology and what limited genetic material could be extracted, they placed Homo longi in a position on the phylogenetic tree closer to modern humans than Neanderthals are. Let that settle for a moment. There may have been a human species living in Asia that was more closely related to us than the Neanderthals of Europe, a species most people have never heard of. Visual. Artistic reconstruction of Homo longi moving through a forest landscape. Not monstrous, recognizable, almost familiar. And if Homo longi is genetically connected to the Donghulin lineage, which current analysis suggests is possible, then we are not talking about a brief, isolated encounter. We may be talking about a ghost population that persisted in East Asia for over 100,000 years, a population whose genetic echo may still be present in living people today. Here's where this stops being ancient history. The Denisovan EPAS1 gene and altitude adaptation in Tibetan populations is the most well-documented example, but it is far from the only one. Research published through 2025 has confirmed that Denisovan-derived gene variants in modern humans are disproportionately concentrated in two biological systems, the immune system and metabolism. This is not coincidence. When modern humans arrived in Southeast Asia and Oceania, environments where Denisovans had already been living for potentially hundreds of thousands of years, those Denisovans had already developed resistance to the pathogens of those specific regions. By interbreeding and acquiring Denisovan immune gene variants, modern humans short-circuited what would have otherwise required thousands of years of independent natural selection. You inherited a biological head start. Specific variants in the OAS gene cluster, linked to resistance to RNA viruses, have been traced to Denisovan introgression. The same OAS genes that help some populations mount more effective immune responses to certain viral infections today. Your genome is not a single document. It is a palimpsest, a manuscript that has been written over, layer upon layer, by species that no longer exist. The Neanderthals wrote some of those layers for most people with European or Asian ancestry, contributing roughly 1 to 2% of the average non-African genome. The Denisovans wrote others, most visibly in Melanesian, Aboriginal Australian, and some East Asian populations. And the unnamed lineage from Donghulin, that chapter is still being translated. The fights your immune system fights today, the altitude your lungs can handle, the metabolic pathways that run quietly beneath your consciousness every hour of your life. Some of those were not won by your species. They were inherited from the ones who came before, from the ghosts in your code. The human story is not simple. It is not clean. It is not a march. It is a collision, repeated, continental, generational, of populations we are only now beginning to name. And the genetic record makes one thing absolutely clear. You are not the endpoint of a single lineage. You are a library, assembled from archives that span hundreds of thousands of years, written in a language we are still learning to read. What we've covered today is the biological layer of a much deeper architecture. Next, we go inside a different kind of system, one that was built in the last decade, not the last 100,000 years, and is already actively rewriting how you think, what you fear, and what you believe is real. The psychology of algorithmic control. If something in this video connected with something you've always wondered about yourself, drop it in the comments. What surprising traits run in your family that you can't quite explain? I'll see you in the next one.